I heard a story about you where some boys hung you up in a tree because you were drunk.
They tied me up in a tree. You must have been talking to Janet. Okay. They tied me up in the tree, and I didn't get home. Then my mother didn't know what happened to me. And finally, somebody came by, and he cried out, and they came. They got the police, and they came, and they untied me and brought me back down from the tree. Yes.
Wow.
That's because I was Jewish, is what all this happened.
Yeah. What was your first job?
My first job, I was a milkman.
Milkman.
A milkman. Yes. And my wife married a milkman. Hilda married a milkman. Yes. When I got out of school in 1941, I have to tell you about the minimum wage in those days was 30 cents an hour. That was, in other words, they had to pay you 30 cents an hour. Big deal. I got 40 cents an hour. That was making ice cream, and I worked in the ice cream factory. And then these milk routes came open, and I tried to get into them because it made more money. That was a salesman's job, and they finally gave me a job as a milkman. I was around this area. I was a milkman, and then I went to the Army, and then when I came back, there was a job waiting for me, and I didn't stay in the milkman business. Okay.
Which war were you in?
World War II, from 1942 to the end of the war till December of 1945. And then I was in the Korean War from 1950, when the Korean War broke out. I was back in the Army again.
How old were you when that happened?
Well, let's see, I was not. When the World War II was there, you had to register for the draft. As soon as you were 18 years old, you signed up. And the day you were 19, I got a little letter, a little card, report for your examination, and you were drafted, and that was it. That's how I got into the Army. That was a year after Pearl Harbor.
What was it like to be a Jew in the service?
Well, you were a minority. I remember every place I went, I was one of the very few Jews. I got to Hawaii one time, and they did have naturally there they had the Navy, and they had the Army, and they had the Air Force, and they had for Passover, they had a Seder. One of the rabbis, and I can't remember his name, who became the rabbi here in Altoona, was the person who was the representing. He was like a rabbi in the service, and he was on the island of Guam when I was there one time. It was Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, and we went with just about half a dozen of us. And then later on, I found out he was a rabbi here in Altoona, called Small World.
Who did you marry?
Who I married? Okay, I married Hilda, and Hilda was her maiden name was Schulman. Yale. Yale had a half brother, whose name was Roy. He was older, and Roy, that was Hilda's father. That's my wife's father, and he had a business here in Altoona, And just a few blocks down here, he was just a young man in his 30s. He was killed by a runaway car. And then later on, Hilda, mother remarried, and they moved to Pittsburgh. And it's a long story, I won't tell you about it, but if you want to hear it, I'll give you a short version of it.
That's okay. Whatever.
You just want to hear about it?
I don't know. Do we? No. Well, I'll just give you the next question.
Okay. All right.
What was your most recent occupation in Bedford?
Okay. I was the executive director of economic development for the county of Bedford. Big title.
Yeah.
My responsibility was to bring industry into Bedford to help them with their loans. I was the chairman of the redevelopment authority during the time we tried to get the Bedford Springs Hotel. Have you been to the Bedford Springs Hotel? Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, I worked on that for many years. And before that, I was a consultant for MetLife for 30 years. So from being a milkman to working for an insurance company to working for the executive director of economic development, and finally, after working for 50 years, I retired.
What does being Jewish mean to you?
Well, a way of life, something that is very precious. I am not exactly the most religious Jew, but I am a Jew, and I don't hide it. And living in a town like Bedford, where you're the only Jew, is very difficult in a way, but I had never had any problems with it. So the fact is, people have learned more about the Jewish religion because I was there. I would bring them to synagogue. A group of them from the church would come here to the synagogue. I have to tell you a story about, during Hanukkah, kids would get a present every 8 days. A little girl down the street went home crying to her mother. She wanted to be Jewish because they got more presents. They got presents for 8 days. We only got presents for 1 day.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you.
That's it?
Yeah.
Okay.